Welcome to Legal Nurse Podcast. I'm Pat Iyer, the host of this show, which I started in September 2016. We now have listeners in more than 105 countries, and we are delighted that you are listening to this episode. Listen to our show on the platform of your choice. And a special request for you to go to podcast.legalnursebusiness.com, where you'll see a red button on the homepage, which you can use to leave a comment or a suggestion for a show or a compliment. Coming up next in this series of courses that I'm teaching is a program called Defense Medical Examinations Made Easy, a course for legal nurse consultants and RNs. I am co-developing it with my colleague, Silvia Aninye. We co-authored the book on defense medical examinations for LNCs, which came out in early 2024. You can join this course to get a comprehensive bit of knowledge and training on being able to observe defense medical examinations, document them, and run your business, either as a subcontractor or a business owner, providing this service to attorneys. It begins on April 2, 2024, and you can sign up at the link below this video, which is lnc.tips/DMEC, standing for Defense Medical Examination Course. I'd love to have you in this live interactive program and look forward to meeting you in person. Welcome to Legal Nurse Podcast. I'm Pat Iyer. Today, we're going to focus on a skill that is in high demand, and that is the use of legal nurse consultants, registered nurses, to observe defense medical examinations, with the emphasis on the word defense, because these are examinations that are paid for by insurance carriers to determine if a person who claims to be injured is really injured. And the fact that these exams are paid for by the insurance carrier introduces the risk of bias. And that's going to be our topic today with our guest, who runs a very large and successful practice in California, specifically to provide nurses to watch the physician who's performing the exam and create a report. In that state of our guest, she and the people she subcontracts cases to are also allowed to record the examination. So I have with me today Silvia Aninye, who is going to be talking with us about some of the ways that bias creeps into this process. Welcome to the show, Sylvia.
Thank you very much, Pat.
I know that you have observed over the last 14 plus years a large number of these exams, and you've got a very active and extensive fleet of legal nurse consultants who observe exams as subcontractors for your company. So I'm sure the topic of, was this doctor biased, comes up. What would our listener to this podcast, who's listening on our audio channels, or viewer who's watching this podcast on the Legal Nurse Business channel on YouTube, what would they see as warning signs that a physician was biased during that process of taking the history or doing the exam?
Usually, the first link or the first indication of bias by the doctors are usually the way they approach you. If they approach you very adversarial from the beginning, especially in the history portion, they question a lot of data in your medical records and ask if the data is correct, and ask in-depth questions about the data that's already in the medical record. That's a little bit of a warning sign that they are looking for loopholes on where the patient, they're looking at the medical records and they're asking the question to see if by any chance the patient might make a mistake and say something else from what's actually in the medical records, and then they could capitalize on that and lead to aggressive questioning in any depositions in the future. That's one of the main warning signs. Also, another warning sign as well is in the physical exam where some doctors become sadistic in the way they handle the patient. Meaning, like an example of that is, for example, if the patient has a hip injury, a regular doctor who is not really thinking about anything and just trying to do his exam would just simply do the exam and start the hip exam, manipulating your leg to see where the pain is in what part of the hip, whether it's in the hip or the buttocks or whether it's an upper area. Somebody who is sadistic would constantly do the same thing, even though there was pain, even though the doctor sees that there's pain, or even though the doctor says, oh, this is the area where there's pain. And they do the same test over and over again. And they say, oh, so it hurts here. And they do the same test again. And they say, oh, are you sure it's here? Or is it here? And it's the same movement. They're not changing the movement, it's the same movement. And they do the same movement 3 or 4 times and keep questioning the client. And in some cases, the clients are actually crying, physically crying, and the doctor is still pushing. Whereas a doctor who just does defense medical exam, just because he's told to do it and he's not really biased, is usually once he does a particular test and notices there is discomfort, the doctor will say, oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry, that I caused you pain. We're going to move on to this. And they leave that and move on to something else. Or sometimes, depending on how big the possibility of pain is, the doctor might not even do the test. And he'll say, look, based on what I'm looking at, I think I can get enough information on what I'm looking at. I don't really need to put you through this major pain. That's usually how you can tell.
We talked about the bias that exists or can exist in a physician who's doing a defense medical exam. We talked about sadistic physicians who are doing repetitive testing that's causing the patient pain. I wanted to pull back just a little bit and focus on what are the factors that introduce the possibility of bias in that physician who's working on behalf of an insurance carrier.
The issues or the things that show a possibility for bias, the first and foremost is how much the doctors are being paid.
Mm-hmm.
Insurance companies. And insurance companies usually pay anything between $5,000 and $10,000, depending on the kind of exam it is. Your indication that this particular doctor is being owned by those insurance companies, first of all, they're on the list. They're on a database list with the insurance company. Secondly, that doctor from that insurance company constantly gets independent or defense medical exams sent to him. Thirdly, the doctor has had depositions or has had court cases where they have been, scrutinized or rebuked, or where the judge says, you're not supposed to do this, or you're not supposed to do that. And they still do the same things. And usually what the attorneys do is they use previous cases. They quote previous cases where the doctor has had problems. But the most important way, or the most obvious, is where the doctor, sometimes in depositions or in the trial, outright lie. They do something and they, you know, print a report, and they write up a report for a DME that was done, but they actually write what did not happen, or things that did happen and things that didn't happen. In California, it is because I don't know in depth about the other states. We can research that further as we move along. But in California, that's one of the main reasons why the defense medical exams are now recorded. Because the reports were so lopsided that they were always on the side of the insurance companies, and the plaintiffs had no recourse as to, challenge what was in the doctor's report except whatever they said. So because of that, they started audio recording the exams and in California, and they started allowing defense medical observers to be in there from the plaintiff side. So the defense medical exam, to some extent, is a little bit balanced.
Well, thank you for pulling those factors together for us. I am still catching my breath over the concept that the physician could be paid, and let's be very clear, for an exam that might take maybe an hour, they could be paid $5,000 to $10,000. Am I correct in hearing those numbers? Or is
Yes,
that applies to, maybe we should be clear. I should clarify with you. They get medical records of the patient beforehand that they're supposed to go
yes,
through. Then they
they,
examine the patient. Then they
right,
write up a report. So
yeah.
that this fee covers all of that.
This fee covers all of that, and I think from my past experience, I don't want to say point blank, definitely $5,000. I think they pay them, from my experience, they pay them based on how good or how profitable that doctor has been in the past to the insurance companies. Because as I explained to you, a good explanation of that is I had a DME once where I went to Long Beach Airport, the Long Beach, not the main airport, where the commercial flights fly out of, but the Long Beach cargo, kind of small plane airport. And you will not believe, as many doctors as they are in California, the insurance company flew a specialist, a cardiologist slash interventional radiologist, all the way from San Francisco to come to that airport and do a DME in the conference room in that cargo airport. Now, as far as I was concerned, why couldn't they get a cardiologist, interventional radiologist in Los Angeles County? There are many of them around, but they took this guy from San Francisco, and he flew in from San Francisco with his own plane. He didn't rent a plane, he flew in with his own plane, which gives an indication that this doctor is making a lot of money from insurance companies besides whatever practice he has and regular patients and operations that he does. I would think that in that particular case, they must have paid that doctor a lot for him to fly from San Francisco, besides the normal fee to actually fly out there. After all, he'll have to have expenses, to service the plane before he comes out, the fueling costs to go and come back from San Francisco. I'm sure he charges that to the attorneys on the defense side or the insurance company. So I would think, for a doctor to go that far First of all, the case must be very important to them. They must want him because of whatever history this doctor has had with cases in the past with insurance company. Hence, they want this particular doctor. And sometimes we have seen when the plaintiff attorneys are refusing a particular doctor, maybe because the doctor has he has a reputation for bias. When they refuse those doctors, some of the doctors, the defense, in some cases, they change the doctor, but in some other cases, depending on what the case is all about, they actually insist on that particular doctor. And they won't allow any other doctor to see that patient. And sometimes the plaintiff attorneys have to actually go to court and get an order to either remove that doctor, and in that case, they have to bring evidence as to why they need that doctor removed, or they go to fight for the possibility of choosing another doctor besides this doctor. And in that case, to me, what that projects is you must have a whole lot of importance on this particular doctor for you to actually go to court and fight for, an order for this particular doctor to be on the case. That means that this particular doctor is known to be on your side, is maybe one of those that intimidates clients all the way, to where the clients get scared of doing the exam, and some other factors that we don't know about. And of course, we don't know for sure exactly how much, these doctors are being paid. These amounts I'm telling you are just amounts like in a range, it could be anywhere from 2 to 3 to 5, it all depends on the case and what's, they say they pay, the doctors a particular fee. As far as my experience is concerned, that's not true. Because I doubt that a doctor that would fly from San Francisco for a particular case to do the exam in Long Beach would do the exam for $3,000 when he has to fly from San Francisco to Los Angeles to do the exam. I highly doubt that. So, but that's my take or my opinion.
That does create a picture of a great financial incentive to be involved in this type of activity. We should stress that doctors who do defense medical examinations are often in the sunset of their years or are not able to continue to maintain the physical demands of being on their feet for long, involved orthopedic surgeries. So that introduces the concern that many people have that the doctors will say anything to please the insurance company. At least, let me start that sentence again since I just knocked my thing here. We should stress that many of the doctors who do defense medical examinations are in the sunset of their career, or if they're orthopedic surgeons, not able to manage the physical demands of standing on their feet all day in the OR for involved surgery. That raises the concern, especially among plaintiff attorneys, is that orthopedic DME doctor will say anything or do anything and be unethical in order to please the insurance carrier so they continue to receive work. Can you comment on that? Is that a valid concern? And if it is, are there any hallmarks of an unethical physician?
Yes, first and foremost, I would like to make a statement that not all DME doctors are the doctors that do this. The doctors that do what we have discussed in this podcast, in most cases, are in the minority. It's a small group of people that are known to do these type of things. Most doctors kind of will stay neutral and will just do the exam and follow the rules, not ask any questions they're not supposed to ask, will not cause pain on the patient. But there is a small group of people that will actually go this route. And yes, since having said that, I have to also validate that from my experience, from what I see, yes, you are correct that a lot of doctors that do this, and this is all they do, seem to be the group that where this happens the most. Because some of them, they actually don't, like you mentioned, they don't do the clinical services anymore. They don't do the operations, and this is all they do. So they end up, making this DME practice their main primary focus because they can, and most of them do them because they want to, even though it's a DME practice, they want to make sure they run successful practices. They don't want to run at a loss. So they are prone to doing things or saying things that are not ethical. Sometimes it's the older doctors, the ones, you'll notice is a lot of the older ones, the ones that are beyond certain years. The ones that are still in clinical practice and do things a certain way or do things neutrally are usually the ones that are still active in practice. But it's kind of a double-edged sword. Some people do it, some people don't. But I need to stress that the level of people that do this are much smaller than the ones that are neutral and the ones that just do the exam and are done with it and get paid by the insurance companies. And if you'd actually talk to a lot of plaintiff attorneys amongst their little groups, they just like, any other profession, they know the doctors that are neutral and they know the doctors that are not. And that's why sometimes they fight to get a particular doctor to do the exam or remove a particular doctor from doing the exam. Hopefully that clarifies it.
Well, thank you. And that is an important distinction. We do not want to give the impression that all DME doctors are biased or unethical. There are many who are neutral and objective. But if we go back to that small minority that you have identified,
Mm-hmm.
what are some signals to the legal nurse consultant who is sitting in that examination room that that physician may be unethical? We talked about biased physicians who may sound very skeptical and doubting, or sadistic doctors who may enjoy inflicting pain. Again, a very small minority. What about the unethical hallmarks? What can the legal nurse consultant pick up in the way of clues that that physician might be unethical?
Well, in terms of being unethical, the hallmarks that don't specifically have to do with the defense medical exams, physical portion is actually the history portion. That's where you get your cues. In that when the doctor looks at the medical records in front of the patient, which by the way, he's not supposed to do. He's supposed to have gone through the medical records before he actually sees the patient. Some doctors will tell you, well, I want to have a neutral mind about whatever the case is, so I don't look at anything until the actual exam. Well, that's lopsided because you're supposed to, the defense sends you those records for you to basically look at the records, see what, treatments they've had, and then actually physically see the patient and see if the patient has gotten better, if the patient has gotten worse, if the patient is remaining the same, and then suggest other treatments that have not been done for the patient to get back to, where as much as possible wherever they could get to in terms of injury. But when you start seeing doctors have the medical records in front of them, and then they say things like, they ask the patient, when did this incident happen? And the patient, maybe sometimes, if it's a long time ago, a lot of these cases are 4 and 5 years old, some patients don't remember and they say the wrong thing or the wrong date. And then the doctor says things like, well, I have he doesn't indicate this beforehand. Before he asks the question, he doesn't indicate this. He first lets the client say a date, and then the client possibly says the wrong date. And then the doctor says, well, I'm looking at your medical records. And your medical records, for example, state January 4th. But you are telling me right now that the date is January 10th. Which is it? Is it January 4th or is it January 10th? Or better yet, which is something a doctor should not be doing, is there another accident that happened on January 10th that you're not telling me about? There's no need for all this. You're supposed to simply, whatever the date of the examination is or the incident, you're supposed to simply zero in on that particular date and whatever happened that particular day. You're not supposed to be indicating, things. And some other, another clue is when the doctors, they start and they say, okay, what's the date? The patient says the date. Oh, did the ambulance come? The patient says yes or no. And then the doctor goes into detail. Oh, can you let me know what happened in the exam? And the patient says, in the accident, sorry. And the patient says, oh, I was T-boned, or I was hit from the back, or I was hit from the side, I was hit head on. And then the doctor starts going into questions like, well, what exactly did you hit? Did you hit your head on the dashboard? Did your head flip to this side and to the other side? Did you hit your head at all? Did you hit any part of your body? And if you did hit any part of your body, where exactly did you hit? What exactly point of contact? I have had so many DMEs where I've had to tell the doctor, in first I would object and say, excuse me, doctor, I don't think we would have to need to go into this detail. I think if you really want to know what happened, you should go back to the police report or the incident report and take that information as whatever happened as a result of the fall or a result of the accident. And I sometimes tell the doctors, which they don't like, and they give me that mean look. I tell them, doctor, I have a question for you as a human being. You're asking this patient if he hit this and that, if this moved and that moved. I highly doubt if you were in an accident, the first thing you would be thinking about is what part of your head hit what and what part of your leg hit what. I think most people, when they are in an accident, in the flight, or flight and fright mode, all they're thinking about is to make sure that they're alive in the accident and make sure that, even if they have any injuries, that the injuries are not life-threatening. Nobody's thinking about, I hit my head here, or I hit my head there, or my leg hit here or there. Come on. This is in a flight or fright mode. What honestly do you think anybody would think at a time like that? And when I make that objection, the doctor looks at me like, I can't believe you said that, but it's my job. That's usually your indications.
You also make me think about something that happened when I was in nursing school. I visited my friend in Colorado, got on her horse, and she told me, don't let the horse run across the furrows for risk of breaking the horse's ankle. This horse paid absolutely no attention to me, knew I was an inexperienced rider, and went across the furrows, and I got thrown. And I remember knowing that I was going to hit the ground. And the next thing that I knew was I was sitting on the side of her bed and looking at her and saying, how did I get to Colorado? How did I get the money to come here?
Yes.
My memory, because I had that concussion, was completely altered. I couldn't have tell you what part of my head that I hit. I knew that my glasses were destroyed because they got thrown off and I may have landed on them. I just know they were all twisted.
Right.
But I couldn't tell you, did I hit my forehead? Did I hit the back of my head? Because I went through the air.
Exactly.
That lack of memory, I learned later on in nursing school. It's your brain needs some time to put down the chemicals to preserve the memory. And if you've had a concussion, you lose it.
Exactly.
So when you talk about what part of your head did you hit, it's very possible if the person had a loss of consciousness, they'll never know.
Right. Or even if you didn't have a loss of consciousness, just the fear and anxiety and the adrenaline during that period in time, which happens with many people. And that's why in most accidents, people don't feel any pain right away when it happens. But 2 or 3 days later, after everything has come down, then they start feeling pain in certain, parts of the body. But some of these doctors are expecting these clients to make a play-by-play session of how their injury happened, which to me is, a sign of bias. Why would you ask that? If you were in that situation, you most likely wouldn't know. So why, if you on your own know that you wouldn't know, why would you ask another human being? Did you do this or did you do that? I mean, come on. And I always tell them, please, doctor, go to the police report or go to the medical records and see what information is there. Now, you can ask questions, which there's nothing wrong with clarifying medical records, because sometimes patients go from different, to different providers at different times. There are gaps, in the medical record where the patient doesn't, do anything. That is okay to ask, oh, did you go to any other doctor during this period? And if you did, what's the doctor's name? And if you know the doctor's phone number, or, to give that information. Yes, you're trying to get a complete picture. But to go into this detail of the actual incident, to me, is a big sign of bias, because it's not necessary. And normally, if that doctor was doing a normal exam, meaning somebody just came into the office with that injury, and there was no lawsuit in question, I highly doubt the doctor would ask that. But that's my opinion.
Well, and that's a great point. there are many nuances to this topic. You and I co-authored a book that was published just recently, Defense Medical Exams Made Easy, a painless guide for legal nurse consultants. That's available at lnc.tips/DME book. Sylvia, I know that our listener is going to want to know how to reach you. What would be the best way for that to happen?
The best way to reach me would either be my phone number, 310-340-9618, or they could email me at sylvia@weberlegalnurse.com.
Perfect. That this time has flown by, Sylvia, and I know that it's a topic that you have a lot of passion about, having encountered these individuals with bias, with unethical practices on more than one occasion in your career. I appreciate you spending the time helping us know a little bit more about this volatile subject. And we will be exploring more about the LNC's role in defense medical examinations in a course that Sylvia and I have developed that will be taught live this spring, which is 2024. Be sure to go to legalnursebusiness.com for information about that course to find out how you can participate in it live. Or if you see this podcast after the course is over, it will be available as an on-demand online course. Thanks so much, Sylvia.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you to you who has been watching this. Be sure to hang on another couple of minutes to find out who is coming up next. Coming up on Legal Nurse Podcast, you're going to have an opportunity to get some tips from me on how you as an expert witness can get more cases. There are 9 tips that I'm going to be sharing in this podcast that will help you focus in on what can you be doing to build your authority and credibility and spread the word about the expert witness services you provide. Stay tuned, coming up next on Legal Nurse Podcast. Thanks for being part of our listening audience for this show. Be sure to go to the link that is right below this video, which is lnc.tips/DMEC, which stands for Defense Medical Examinations Course. And join us for our April 2, 2024 live course. Our course will meet for 5 weeks, live every Tuesday for 5 weeks, to give you the skills that you need to be able to observe defense medical examinations, gain more business doing them, write more flowing, coherent reports, and gain skill in the process of being part of a business that supplies defense medical examination observers. Go to that link, and I look forward to having you in the course.